All right, so this presentation is about finding funding for study abroad with me. My name is Lindsay. I'm a peer advisor with CGIS. I'm currently a junior. I went abroad to London last summer and I'm on my way to Lisbon this summer. Okay. There we go. Okay, so what you need to know. So for starters, each student's financial aid package is unique to their situation. So that is something that's super important to remember. So when comparing any kind of package with your friends, note that yours will be very different from theirs, even if you're attending the same program. Planning ahead is super, super important. Those deadlines come up extremely fast, so make sure you're aware of them when you're applying for any study abroad or internship. To give you an example, from my program that I went on last summer, the scholarship deadline was less than a week after the program deadline, meaning that I applied for that scholarship before I even knew if I had gotten accepted into the program yet. So when you're kind of getting all that stuff ready for program applications, make sure that you're organizing what scholarships you want to apply to as well, so you don't miss any of those deadlines. Requirements and deadlines also vary. Some scholarships are more hands-on and require more detailed essays and things like that, and other ones are super quick and easy. And of course, deadlines vary even within the University of Michigan. For example, the General Study Abroad Scholarship has a different deadline than, say, the internship scholarship. And then while you may be able to fund part of your experience through scholarships, you might also want to consider different loans as well. And the Office of Financial Aid is a great resource to talk to you about if you have any questions with that. Okay, so starting off with your search and how to start looking. So the first thing we recommend is you go to CGIS's website, and then right there at the top tab, you can find the student resources. Under student resources, we have a whole section for different financial aid and scholarships. You can also find the CGIS Study Abroad and International Internship Scholarship Guide, which is this huge spreadsheet that I'll show you on the next slide, and that has all different types of scholarships, including ones that are both need-based and merit-based. I know it can be hard to find funding if you're not a student who qualifies for financial aid. So that's a great resource to find ones that are merit-based as well. Academic departments is something we're also going to get into more later, but these are a great resource. They have all different types of scholarships and funding opportunities specific for students within their department. So that's really great because it means you have a little bit less competition because you're dealing with a specific department instead of the university as a whole. There also is the Have Funding Will Travel spreadsheet. That's another huge spreadsheet with all different types of funding opportunities that you can look through. You can also search on mCompass. There's a whole different funding tab on there, and you can find all different types of scholarships, and you can even sort based on filters and see which ones match best to you based on what you qualify for. And then it sounds obvious, but a Google search is also a great way to start. You can type in all different types of keywords and find so many different areas of funding. So, for example, you could do study abroad scholarships for students going to this location or studying any kind of subject for students a part of different student orgs and parts of your identity. So, for example, maybe you are a first gen student or you're a commuter student or someone with any kind of identity that could fit into any scholarship source. So make sure you definitely exhaust those resources because there are so many unclaimed scholarships out there that you want to be taking advantage of. So this is that spreadsheet I was talking about earlier on the CGIS website. You can see that there are a ton of different categories that are filtered through. There's all these different scholarships available. So as you're starting your search, just make sure you take a look at that. So maybe you're someone who you really want to focus on the merit-based scholarships, so you can sort it that way or any way that you want to. Make sure you're keeping in mind, like if you qualify. So for example, if you have a scholarship that's for a specific location and you're not heading to that location, you're going to want to look at other opportunities. So getting into that search and what that looks like. So we have some common scholarships listed here. So the first one is the LSA Study Abroad Scholarship, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, but that is just the general study abroad scholarship for LSA students. Then you have the Gilman Scholarship. This is specific for Pell Grant recipients. So that's really great opportunity if you are a Pell Grant recipient. And then you have the Bourne Scholarship. This one is for specific languages. So maybe if you're studying a language as part of your program, you might qualify for this scholarship. The International Institute also has their own study abroad funding, and they also have their own opportunities there as well. And then the Go Blue, Go Abroad Scholarship is a workshop program. That's really great if you're a first year student, and you can get a great scholarship through them as well. And here are some examples of what it looks like when you're searching for less common scholarships. So we have the Bridging Scholarships for Study Abroad in Japan. That one obviously is location-based. And then you have the Clara Carter Higgins Summer Environmental Studies Scholarship. That one is for students of a specific major. And then there also are through Student Org, CSP has an opportunity grant. And then what I mentioned earlier, being first gen has their own scholarship, the NASFAL Rainbow Scholarship, that's related to identity as well. You can also look at provider-specific scholarships. At CJS, we partner with different companies and organizations when it comes to our study abroad programs. DIS is one of our partners, and they have their own study abroad scholarship. Okay, so getting deeper into searching for department aid, over on the right-hand side, you see what that looks like and how you can kind of toggle for those different awards and funds. So at the University of Michigan, we have tons of different independent departments, and they will offer specific aid for students as part of their department. So if you've been putting off declaring your major or something along those lines, that is a great motivational factor for doing so. There's also language programs that have scholarships. So the Department of Romance, Languages, and Literature has great scholarships for students studying Spanish, French, Italian, and Portuguese. So that's a great resource if you're going abroad for one of those. So when looking at your department website, you're going to want to toggle to the undergraduate tab. And then under that tab, there's going to be something relating to some kind of award or scholarship page. So sometimes it's called awards, sometimes it's called scholarships or funding, prizes, anything along those lines. And they have a list of different scholarships that are only for students in that department. So like I said, you're going to want to make sure that you have declared your major or declared your minor and things like that. So that way you do in fact qualify for those scholarships. And that's a great way to get some extra information. I also personally recommend subscribing to your department newsletter. They have a ton of different information on their newsletter specifically related to funding, and that's a really great way to get notifications about when deadlines are coming up. You can also ask your different professors or advisors. Like there are so many professors who have worked here for years and years and years, and they have tons of good information about where you can find scholarships and what ones would qualify for you specifically. So I would definitely reach out to them. And if you're considering a research-based program, there's tons of different research funding and support available in so many departments. So that's a great resource for you as well. So the first tip of the day is don't self-reject, like don't do the work for them. So a lot of times when you're applying for scholarships, there's a lot of self-doubt and you're kind of unsure what the panel is looking for. So the first thing is they want people who are going to self-reflect. So even if you have like struggles or things like that, or things that you are unsure about, you can self-reflect about that in your essays, talk about how you've overcome certain challenges and things like that. Everybody has a unique story to tell and they have different skill sets. So you can make sure you want to highlight those different things that you specifically bring to the table. And a lot of times students will count themselves out because they don't look at themselves as an expert. So for example, like maybe you're going abroad studying a language and you think to yourself, well, I am not very good at this language. I'm not going to get this scholarship. I'm not even going to try. But a lot of times they're looking for students who will benefit the most from the program, not necessarily people who are already experts. So make sure you're not counting yourself out because you always have something to offer. The next thing that you're really going to want to do is you want to set yourself up for success. I know as students, we all tend to procrastinate, but this is something you really want to take advantage of while it's available to you. So thinking about how you can be a strong candidate, the first thing that you're going to want to do is research the scholarship. And a lot of scholarships with their own website have their own tabs that have so many good information for you. So for example, the Gilman Scholarship for Pell Grant recipients, they have an entire section on their website about how to write a proper essay, about different ideas for part of the outreach project that you could do. They have different like help sources and things like that in their own departments for people who want to help you. So make sure that you're researching the scholarship, thinking about who has received it in the past and what are some things that they did that you might want to apply to your own application. You also really want to make sure that you're reading the full prompt closely. A lot of times prompts will be multi-part, so you don't want to accidentally miss part of the prompt and end up disqualifying yourself completely on accident. So make sure you're being really careful and reading it multiple times. You also really want to tell a story. So like I mentioned earlier, what were your challenges? How did you overcome them? You can include things like past, present, and future, which we'll get into a second, same as ethos, logos, pathos. That's a great way to kind of tell a full rounded story. And you really want to use examples specifically for you and use concrete examples. So for example, a lot of people in their essays will say things like, study abroad really helped me grow as a person. That is a great, great start, but you definitely want to tailor that more to yourself because that same sentence can be applied for a multitude of students. So maybe for you specifically, you grew through your career goals or through your different skills that you're going to apply in the professional world by doing this, 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 and this. So make sure that you're taking these broad ideas and really tailoring to them to you specifically, and that's going to really help you stand out as a candidate. So going into the story example of past, present, and future, here you have a essay from a student or like a prompt basically about them wanting to study abroad in German. And you can see how they talked about when they began learning German, and that's going into the past. And then in the present is what they're planning on on doing when they study abroad in Germany. And then for the future, they're bringing in like how this study abroad is going to help them in the future and how they're going to use that skill set. So that's a really great way to tell a well-rounded story. And that gives the people judging your scholarship a full idea of why you want the scholarship, what you're going to do with it, and how you're going to keep using it in the future. And then going into ethos, logos, pathos, that is another good method of telling a well-rounded story. So starting with ethos, I grew up with a strong interest in biology, so getting into kind of like the morals and intelligence and things like that. And then logos, this is the logical aspect. So why specifically this program? What is special about this program that's helpful to you as a person? And then pathos, you can get into your different identities here, your motivations or your different emotions. And that once again, you're telling a full rounded story for the panel and they're able to see multiple parts of you throughout your essay. So just some things to keep in mind. The U.S. State Department travel warnings can affect some scholarships. So for example, if the U.S. puts a travel restriction on the area that you are planning on studying abroad to, that could definitely affect some areas of funding. Specifically, the Gilman Scholarship is one that is a risk to that. So definitely make sure that you're keeping up with those travel bans and keeping an eye on things. also has travel restrictions and warnings, so you just want to make sure that you're really keeping an eye on all of that because that could definitely affect any funding that you might have received from these different scholarships. So getting deeper into the LSA Study Abroad Scholarship, we at CGIS highly recommend that students apply for this scholarship. These funds can help cover the cost of attendance and travel. This is for all programs, so even if you're going for a short summer program or a long full year program, please apply to the scholarship. It's a great opportunity for you. So students who qualify and have unmet financial need receive scholarships and averaging $3,900. That is a ton of money, and that could be really beneficial to any student studying abroad. So make sure that you're keeping an eye on those deadlines. So for example, for winter 27, funding is due September 22nd. So that's a perfect example of those deadlines coming up really fast. So make sure you're keeping an eye on that so that you're not accidentally missing scholarships. So for more info about the scholarship, you can visit their site right there that's linked for you. You can also schedule an appointment or you can email the team. So if you have any questions or concerns, definitely do that. So getting deeper into the Go Blue, Go Abroad scholarship, this is one that I actually did myself my first year on campus. So this is designed specifically for first year students, including transfer students. So if your first semester on campus, even if you're not freshman standing, you qualify for this workshop. To do this workshop, you attend 3 different sessions and you complete 2 reflective assignments. So once again, specifically open to first year students at Ann Arbor. And after you fulfill these requirements, you will receive a $1,000 scholarship that can be put towards any U of M study abroad program anytime during your time here, as long as it's before graduation. So there is no deadline or anything like that. You just have to use it before you graduate. So the Office of Financial Aid has their own study abroad department. So that is a great resource for you to do. So students are genuinely able to use their financial aid packages in some form towards a study abroad program. We really recommend that you meet with them and discuss how your specific package, because like we said, they're all tailored to you individually, will be applied towards your specific study abroad. You can also fill out the study abroad estimate worksheet where you go over the estimated cost of your program, how much you currently receive in financial aid, and they will send you back an estimate of what they would be able to give you for that program. So that's a great way to kind of get an idea of how much other funding you're going to want to need to look into. So you can email them at their email right there at finaid.abroad@umich.edu. So that's a great resource for you, and we definitely recommend that you reach out to them and clear up any questions or concerns. So some other resources, like we mentioned earlier, the CGIS website, we have tons of information on scholarships and funding there. So that's a great source. Compass, where you have already been looking at applying to programs, also has their own source for funding. So when you go and look at your program type, you're going to choose funding, and you can search for things like funding for students who are at this grade level, funding going to this place, or things along those lines, and it'll help you narrow down your search that way. The Sweetland Writing Center is an amazing resource if you are someone who is worried about your essay. They have all different types of free resources for students, and they also have a no-contact asynchronous written feedback and peer writing center, meaning that you just send them your essay and they will send it back to you, sort of like a peer edit that you would do in class. That's a really great way that if you're struggling to kind of bump your essay up to the next level, you can reach out to them and it is at no cost to you. And then, like we mentioned earlier, the Office of Financial Aid has their own study abroad section, and they can help you better understand your package. You can also look into the International Center. They have their own funding, as well as the International Institute has their own fellowships. Okay, well, that concludes the end of our presentation. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and unmute yourself now, or if you want, you could leave them in the chat and I'd be happy to answer them for you. And if there are no questions, then this concludes the presentation. So I recommend that you scan that little QR code down there at the bottom. You can start receiving our newsletter, and you'll receive updates about different deadlines, new programs, and of course, scholarships. So I'll stick around for a few minutes, and if you have any questions, just let me know. But other than that, you are free to go.